This is the first video on our nationalism unit. Nationalism leads in history to many revolutions. When you see our own flag, it evokes certain emotions. The flag evokes powerful feelings of loyalty and belonging. You identify with this flag. I'm one of the people in this nation, and the flag is a symbol of this nation. It's a tool to raise nationalism. Nationalism comes out in daily life in many complex ways, and these ways kind of make up what is known as national identity. It's kind of your pride in your nation that you express in everyday life. This could be the community celebrating a holiday, music, art, literature, even the foods we eat is unique to our nation and our culture. Our history makes a large part of our nationalism, shared experiences, sports, museums, monuments. Nationalism is a complex idea. This presentation will explore many of the meanings of nationalism, including the creation of nations in the 19th century Europe. That's the 1800s. The sentiments people had as members of nations, the ways in which they expressed those feelings through the language of symbols, the movements that supported and expanded nations, and the belief systems that arose around nations and national identity will be explained in this unit. Nationalism is ideologies, feelings of belonging, common symbols or languages, in even political movements. Jonathan Gottfried von Herder was born in 1744. He studied theology. At one point, served as the court preacher in Weimar. This quote reflects Herder's emphasis on the emotional and spiritual aspect of nationalism. He says, quote, "Nature brings forth families. The most natural state, therefore, is also one people, with a national character of its own." Joseph Stalin lived in 1879 to 1953. The son of a shoemaker, Stalin eventually became one of the most powerful leaders in Soviet history. In his essay, Marxism in the National Question, Stalin explored the concept of nation and how the existence of distinctive nations could be reconciled with the development of the communist USSR. Stalin says, "A nation is primarily a community, a definite community of people, a stable community of people." In this image, 3 Russian soldiers chat in front of a kiosk. This picture illustrates both spoken and written language. Most world nations have a primary or official language. However, most nations also have many minority languages, and in some cases, like Switzerland, a nation may have more than one official language. So like in the United States, it's not uncommon to hear people speaking Spanish or something else as well. So language is important for practical communication. However, in this quote, Herder suggests that language is important for many other reasons as well. Language embraces the very soul of a people. Herder says, "Has a people anything dearer than the speech of its fathers? In its speech resides its whole thought domain, its tradition, history, religion, and basis of life, all its heart and soul." This stanza is from the song "The German Fatherland." The first 6 stanzas repeat the question, what is the German's fatherland? And suggest a variety of answers. For example, the Prussian land, the Swabian land, where Rhine the vine-clad mountain leaves, where skims the goal the Baltic waves. Then each stanza answers, no, his fatherland's not bounded so. The stanza here finally discloses that the German's fatherland can be found where the German language is spoken. You see here how language is really a big nationalistic uniter of people. Today, the majority of nations also have states, or internationally recognized political territories, and governing institutions. Some groups, such as the Palestinians and Kurds, can be described as stateless nations, though both Palestinians and Kurds claim a homeland. In this quotation, Stalin observes that in order to be a nation, a people must have an economy. Thus, people of different social classes, occupations, or other groups work together to produce and exchange goods. Stalin's quote: community of territory is one of the characteristic features of a nation. This requires, in addition, an internal economic bond which welds the various parts of a nation into a single whole. In some cases, it is not until a people are conquered and occupied by a foreign power that they develop an awareness of their desire for autonomy and freedom. Many 19th century nationalist movements aimed to free themselves from a foreign power. When the French invaded Germany, they rejected this idea of being under the French. So he thought German should be for Germany, and this is because of nationalistic ideas that they were different than the French. Territory. Nietzsche, the guy on the last slide, recognized the importance of language in defining a people, yet he discusses the significance of territory also. Mountain chains, rivers, deserts, and oceans are features of the physical landscape that shape the places within which people live. So, before we read this quote, I want you to ask yourself, according to this text, are people a nation because they share a physical territory, or do they share a territory because they live together? Well, in the natural view of things, it is not because men dwell between certain mountain chains and rivers that they are people, but on the contrary, men dwell together, and if they're lucky, has so arranged it, are protected by rivers and mountains, because they were a people already by the law of nature, which is much higher. So I think we can all agree it's saying people are a nation, and it's not because of where they live. National character is a 19th and early 20th century concept. It is hard to talk about national character without delving into stereotypes or cliches, but it is common for people to perceive nationalities being distinct from one another. Americans are often seen as individualistic, brash, and aggressive. Italians are known for romance, and Japanese people are often viewed as being highly disciplined. Today, historians and anthropologists are more likely to talk about national identity than national character, or about the psychological and social connection individuals feel with the nation. You may have heard that Americans love freedom. That's a national characteristic, some kind of stereotype you can apply to a group of people. In this passage, Herder refers to the Roman historian Tacitus, who commented favorably on the Germans for being a distinct people. Later in the same text, Herder argues that the German people have become degraded by mingling with others. So we're going to read this quote. The tribes of Germany, who never degrade themselves by mingling with others, form a peculiar, unadulterated, original nation, which is its own archetype. Even their physical development is universally uniform, despite the large number of people. So he's saying they're all kind of the same, and they don't mix with other people that are different. So, what do you think about this mingling with others? Degrading a nation, this concept that to mix makes you worse. What measures would a leader take to restore the integrity of a nation and make it strong again from mingling? Well, a leader might attempt to close a nation's borders to immigration, expel immigrants, prohibit marriages between people of the nation and others, and even plan to carry out expulsions or genocide. In this quote, Herder develops the theme of the distinctiveness of nations. In quotes on previous slides, Herder described language and character as being defining characteristics of nations. This quote adds to that idea of culture, or the habits and customs of daily life. The image in this slide reflects a stereotypical portrayal of German culture. Quote, the best culture of a people cannot be expressed through a foreign language. It thrives on the soil of a nation most beautifully. In this quotation, Fichte refers to the history of the German people going back to the fall of the Roman Empire. A sense of history and historical destiny is an important element of nationalism. Nations are made through historical processes. An understanding of history enables people to identify with the creation and existence of their nation. The image in this slide shows Germanic invaders triumphing over the Romans. So, quote, freedom to the Germans meant just this, remaining Germans and continuing to settle their own affairs independently and in accordance with the original spirit of their race. When our ancestors triumphed over Roma, the eternal, not one of all these peoples was in existence, but the possibility of their existence in the future was one for them in the same fight. In 1823, Lord Byron went to aid the Greeks in their fight for independence from the Turks. He would die just a year later, but he was left this stanza from the Isles of Greece as part of his literary legacy. Here, Byron refers to the battle of the Greeks against the Persians on the plain of Marathon. It is said that 10,000 Greeks defeated 25,000 Persians in this battle, effectively retaining their freedom from Persian domination. So let's take a look. The mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea. And musing there an hour alone, I dreamed that Greece might yet be free, for standing on the Persian's grave, I could not deem myself a slave. This definition of Stalin summarizes the key characteristics of a nation. Nations are communities of people who share a homeland or identity with one. They maintain an interconnected economic life and can be seen as having distinctive personalities, habits, and customs. Stalin said, quote, a nation is a historically evolved, stable community of language, territory, economic life, psychological makeup manifested in a community of culture. Here's your discussion question for today's lesson.